Hey everybody. I wanted to make this video for you guys so that when you're going through these documents, you know more what I'm looking for. And because I can't necessarily come around and provide, individual feedback, I thought this could be super useful. And so today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through the documents for the Spanish Civil War. And I'm going to be doing a few things. Number one, I'm going to be explaining kind of what I'm looking for when I'm grading these, and again, why I'm grading these and why I'm looking for this is less to do with this specific unit, Spanish Civil War. We got like one day on it really, um, but the idea is that you are doing the same fundamental processes that you're going to need to do for these documents or constructed response questions as you will on the regions, right? And it's almost like, there's a saying, practice makes perfect. My old high school basketball coach hated that. He said, perfect practice makes perfect. Because you can practice shooting free throws like this all day, and unless you're Joakim Noah, you're not going to get drafted to the NBA, right? You need to practice the perfect form, and I guarantee you, number one, that if you do these steps, you're going to get a 100 on every single one of these assignments. And number two, a lot of these assignments will make more sense to you. The different periods that we're talking about will blend together a little bit more. And not only will that help you be more successful right now, but using these same kind of techniques, it'll help you be more successful in the future, right? In other classes in college, when you're reading more complex texts that are longer than these documents. And so let's take a look at, oh, I almost forgot. Bow. Right? It's Birch. It's Birch. It's Birch in a tie. He's wearing a tie. Yeah, I didn't have my slides, and I know that you all said wow at the same time. I wanted to put Birch in here too. So yeah, it's Birch. All right. Now, back to the Spanish Civil War. All right. Very ugly time period. Before you attempt these documents, you should definitely look at the slides. In fact, just keep the slides open while you're working on these documents. There's no reason that you can't be using one to help with the other. That's the point of doing the slides in class, to kind of front load some knowledge that you know the general context before you dive into the documents, into the nitty gritty. And so, Spanish Civil War. We're going to start with document 1. And I can see that there's some source information right here. A speech given by Francisco Franco to his population in 1914. The number one reason that that's important to you, as you know from the slide notes that you saw before attempting this document, is that Francisco Franco is a fascist. I know, fascist Francisco Franco, triple F, less exciting than Triple H, but a whole lot bloodier, and it was real. Because of course Triple H is a wrestler, and that is all fake. So you have Francisco Franco to his population, so you have the fascist dictator ultimately giving a speech to the Spanish people. Now, I'm going to start on this first line, right? But I'm going to underline any information that is going to help me answer those two questions. And what I'm going to do is literally underline it on the document so that when you submit it and I see it, I can see the evidence that you are basing your answers off of. So the two questions are, what did Franco want Spain to do? And who has Franco learned from? And the reason I'm reading those questions first is because it really frames how I'm going to look for evidence, and it frames how I'm going to look for and try and word my answer. And so let's begin. The people might not be with Spain, but what is inadmissible or can't be allowed is that any one should be against Spain. Okay, so the people might not be with Spain, but as long as they're not against it, we're okay, I guess. We are actors in a new era in which we can have no connection with the mentality of the past. So we can't be thinking how we used to. Spain's way of thinking cannot go back to the 19th century, cursed by so many false conceptions. We must come together to build a new future. Oh, that sounds familiar. Coming together, building a new future. I'm thinking about other people that have used that kind of nationalism. You need to be with us, not against us. It kind of seems like other time periods that we've talked about, whether it's Otto von Bismarck or Giuseppe Mazzini. Let's keep on going. It is necessary for the Spaniards to abandon the old liberal prejudices and take a look at Europe in order to analyze contemporary or modern history. The happiness promised by the French Revolution became nothing but barter business, competition, low wages, and mass insecurity. And if we just pause there, that kind of makes sense with what we've been going through. What's happened since the French Revolution? Well, you have industrialization, which is low wages, not good for most people. Even though the French Revolution was like, yeah, all the people are going to get everything they want. Instead, we have, no, you're going to work in a factory and have to compete for a job against your son who's probably going to get the job, and you're going to have nothing, ultimately. So again, I'm comparing this to past times in history. I'm thinking about the fact that Franco is saying this himself. So when this document says, like, it is necessary for Spaniards to abandon the old liberal prejudices, that's him saying, this is what I want you to do. But I'm not going to really underline that because I have no idea what the hell old liberal prejudices are. I could take that, I could just copy and paste it, boom, that's my answer. But if I can't talk about it, right, if that is a quote that I cannot analyze, I cannot break down, and I cannot put in my own words, then that's not my answer. Because my answer needs to be something that I can talk about. Right now, this is just a document. But when you're taking the enduring issues portion of the Regents exam, whatever quote you take from those documents, you're going to have to put that into a paragraph. You're going to have to build that evidence into a paragraph. And if you can't talk about that evidence, well, there's no way you're turning it into a paragraph. So let's focus on something that we can take out of this. And we're going to keep on going, but I just wanted to model, right? This is what I'm thinking. I'm seeing what he's saying to his people. I'm seeing what he's comparing himself to. He's saying it is necessary for Spaniards to abandon the old blah, 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 and to look at Europe and analyze modern history. Well, what's going on in Europe at this modern time? We know that Hitler has taken over Germany. He's a fascist dictator. We know that Mussolini has taken over Italy. He's a fascist dictator. We know that Lenin and then Stalin took over the Soviet Union, that are both communist dictators. So when he's saying we need to look at all these other countries and what they're doing, he's saying, hey, all these other countries have dictators. What are we going to do? All right, so let's keep on reading. But again, comparing what he's saying to the rest of Europe. Mussolini's genius instilled all just and human elements interested in the Italian Revolution into the fascists' aims. Okay, so now he's straight up talking about Mussolini. Kind of sounds like you like him. I mean, first word Mussolini, second word genius. That's kind of a compliment, right? And so I'm already looking at number 2. Who is Franco learn from? Let's see if we can incorporate that into our answer. I'm going to go ahead and just underline it right now. Mussolini welded or brought together the two elements closely and united his own heart into the belief of the fascist revolution, a social urge and a national idea. Later, Germany found a new solution for the popular yearnings in Nazism, which unites the national and social idea for the second time in Europe with race thirsting for international justice. Those are not isolated movements, but rather aspects of one and the same general movement and mass rebellion throughout the world. Wow. So that is dense. There's a lot there. But you could see from the first paragraph, when we started predicting what are these other modern movements, in the second paragraph, he goes out and he names them, right? So let's answer number 2 first. Who is Franco learned from? We saw in the first sentence of the second paragraph, Mussolini's genius. So he's learning about Mussolini. But then he goes on to talk about Germany. Germany found a new solution for the popular yearnings of Nazism. If he's saying this is a solution, Again, that's a compliment. He's not saying, oh, those Nazis, they're a problem. He's saying, look at what those Nazis did. They found a solution, right? And even if I completely disagree with that, which I do, as you all know, there's a reason that I don't have a mom side of my family. That right there tells us who Franco's learning from. So you could put right, in your thing, Franco is learning from Mussolini. Mussolini. I'm a terrible speller, but whatever. This is spell check, so we're good. Is learning from Mussolini in Italy, and it doesn't say in the reading who in Germany he's learning from, but you could say Nazis, and you can also look back into those notes and say, well, who's in charge of Germany right now? Hitler. He's learning from Hitler and the Nazis in Germany. And the reason a lot of times I'll hear students say, do we need to echo the question? Here's the thing about echoing the question, right? It's not just a formula. It's not just a squared plus b squared equals. If I put these words from the question in my answer, it will just be right. It's not about that. It's about the way that you're framing how you think about it. If you are writing, Franco is learning from Mussolini in Italy, and you're not just saying Mussolini, right? Is he learning from Mussolini? Yes. Is that one word answer correct? Yeah, it's not incorrect. But that's the thing. With these answers, you are framing how you think about these documents. Now, just as a sidetrack, if you think about our perfect paragraph, all that's doing is really taking a piece of evidence and then breaking it down in your own words and then adding a little bit. So even with this answer right here, right? If I just copy and pasted this quote right there, I'm going to put it in quotes. This would be a really solid body component, really solid core to my perfect paragraph, because now I have evidence. I have me breaking it down. If I wanted to add a few more sentences, I could turn this answer into a perfect paragraph right now. Mussolini was the fascist dictator who took over Italy following World War II depression. Germany or Hitler or whatever you want to say, all of that is just adding depth. And so what I'm saying is each one of these questions, the way that you underline and identify the evidence and the way that you talk about that evidence in your answer and put it in your own words, you could ultimately take any one of these questions and turn it into a perfect paragraph. And that's kind of the goal, to think about these CRQs differently. It's not just what can I copy paste? Can I take random old liberal prejudices? I'm just going to put old liberal. Well, if I can't talk about it, then I can't turn it into a perfect paragraph. I can't go in depth about that piece of evidence. So that's why, like in class, if you say, oh, is this piece of evidence good? I might say, yeah. Does anyone have different evidence that's also good? There's a whole lot in here that you can use. It's just a matter of what you feel the most comfortable talking about. And that's what I say you should use. Now, if we go to the first question, what does Franco want Spain to do? I could say he wants them to be more like Italy, or he wants them to be more like Germany, or he wants to be more fascist, because that's what I'm getting from the second paragraph. And that is me putting it in my own words. You could also take a component of the first paragraph. Spain cannot go back into the 19th century. Yeah, that's what he wants Spain to do, not go back into the 19th century. But what does that mean? If I can't talk about it, then it's not something that I should be writing. It is necessary for Spaniards to abandon the old liberal prejudices and take a look at Europe in order to analyze contemporary or modern history. Yeah, if I just write the old liberal prejudices, it doesn't give me anything to talk about. If you wanted to say to take a look at Europe in order to analyze contemporary or modern history, and that makes you think, oh, he wants to do what other European countries are doing, yeah, that's perfect. As long as you're thinking he wants them to do what other European countries are doing, then perfect, right? But it's all a matter of what you see as something that you can talk about. Even in the first sentence, the people might not be with Spain, But what is inadmissible, can't be allowed, is that anyone should be against Spain. What does Franco want Spain to do? It seems like he wants people to come together, or at least to not be against Spain. I can go to the third sense. Spain's way of thinking cannot go back to the 19th century. That doesn't really, what does that mean? What does 19th century thinking mean? If you can't tell me, then don't use that as your evidence for your answer. But if you continue, cursed by so many false conceptions, we must come together to build a new future. What does Franco want Spain to do? Franco wants Spain to come together and build a new future. That seems like a super reasonable answer. You could say that reminds you of nationalism or unification in Germany, unification in Italy. You could build on that in a bunch of different ways that I think are totally plausible and doable. And so I'd say for number one, whatever you want to put in there, put it in there. Just make sure that whatever you're using as evidence, you're underlining right on the document. Just so that when I look at this, I can see where you're getting your information from. And that way I can say, like in feedback, hey, that's a really, really good piece of evidence. What else could it mean? Or perfect answer, perfect evidence. Birch is happy for you, and I'm happy for you, and Birch is happy for you, and Birch is happy for me, and I'm happy for Birch, and we're both happy for you. So let's take a look at document number 2, and then I will stop torturing you with this quarantine special. Oh man, I need to come up with a cool fit. I think what's going to happen after this is there's going to be like a star that swipes across the screen, and then I do something. I'll see if I can get it with video editing later. Document 2, an eyewitness account following the bombing of a market city, Guernica. Again, this was in those slide notes, so you should be able to get a little bit of the context for what's going on from those notes. Document 2, eyewitness account. This is a primary source. This is real. Let's go down to the questions, and the things that we're looking for is, how did the survivors of Guernica behave? What types of people had been in Guernica? All right, this is a very vague question, which means that there's a lot of possible answers. So whatever you think of when you think of types of people, go with it. A government official, tears streaming down his face, burst into the dismal dining room crying, "Guernica is destroyed. The Germans bombed and bombed and bombed." The time was about 9:30 p.m. Captain Roberts banged a huge fist on the table and said, "Bloody swine." Although he probably said it in like Spanish or some other language, because this is not, it's from Spain. Anyway, 5 minutes later, I was in on one of just make up a pronunciation if you're having trouble with it, but try and make it funny and memorable. That way you can think back or just be comfortable pronouncing stuff. Mendengiron. He's not French, right? He's Spanish. Whatever. This dude's limousines speeding towards Guernica. 5 minutes later, I was in one of this guy's limousines speeding towards Guernica. We were still a good 10 miles away when I saw the reflection of Guernica's flames in the sky. As we drew nearer, on both sides of the road, men, women, and children were sitting, dazed. I saw a priest in one group. I stopped the car and went up to him. "What happened, Father?" I asked. His face was blackened, his clothes in tatters. He couldn't talk. He just pointed to the flames, still about 4 miles away, and then whispered, "Aviones, bombas, mucho, mucho." Planes, bombs, mad of them. And so again, this is an eyewitness account telling you about their experiences. How did the survivors of Guernica behave? Well, we saw a few people, women, children saying they were dazed. Saw a priest, they couldn't talk. I'll say the survivors acted or behaved, or however you want to put it, dazed or confused. Those are two words that I usually put together because of a movie that came out that I saw when I was younger. Dazed and confused. Well, yeah, you can watch it, but whatever. Don't watch it. The survivors of Guernica acted dazed or confused. Ernest probably saw it. Ernest, you know you've seen it. Almost like they were traumatized. Now, this document didn't say traumatized, but the way I'm feeling, like I'm looking at this, I'm like, yo, that dude's traumatized. So I'm just going to write traumatized. And you know what? I don't know how to spell traumatized. I'm going to get a little red squiggly line, but if you don't know how to spell something, whoever is grading your exam on the Regents, as long as you get it close enough, they're going to know what you're talking about, all right? It's a history test, not a spelling test. What types of people had been in Guernica? To me, when I read that, I saw, let me underline my evidence for number one. Women and children were sitting dazed. Saw a priest and he couldn't talk. That's some solid evidence right there. What types of people? I'm looking at this. What types of people did they see? Men, women, and children. Priests. They're probably Spanish. And if you take information from the slideshow, you'll know that it was just like a bunch of like farmers and people. I'm not going to put that in my answer, just you can. But who was living there? Men, women, children, priests. Who was not living there? Soldiers weren't living there. Revolutionaries weren't living there. This was a peaceful little town. It was just a market, and the Nazis firebombed the hell out of it. And so you can go ahead and go on to document number 3. I just wanted to really make sure that we're doing a few things. Number 1, we're underlining the evidence that we're getting things from. Number 2, the way that we're thinking about that evidence. It reflects the way we're framing our answers and the way that we're seeing all of this to begin with. And number 3, just to really reinforce that idea is, if you put an answer on that page and it's based from a quote that you don't understand, I would say look for a different quote. Or if it is a quote that you can understand but you can't, really figure out how to put it into your own words, I'd say go to the slideshow. See if that'll help you. Go throughout other pieces of evidence. See if that'll help you. And in every case, make sure that your answers are in your own words, because this is just part of the goal. The goal is to get a perfect score on the CRQs, but it's also to make sure that when the enduring issue essay comes up, you just nail it, right? And the way that you're thinking about this, the way that you're approaching this, it's all practice, which could be shooting free throws like this, and only Joakim Noah passes the Regents, or it could be perfect practice, perfect form. We're all getting drafted. We're all passing the Regents exam. So have a good one, and I'll see you later. Wash those hands.